Hi everybody, my name is Colette O'Byrne and you're all very welcome to this evening's Consider DCU for Postgraduate Study event. As you can see, there's a lot of us here on the call tonight, but we're going to break out into different sections and different sessions in a few moments. So I just wanted to give you a few bits of information before we officially start. So if you do have any questions, you can ask them in the chat button and we'll be delighted to answer them. If we can't answer them, we'll take your details and get back to you as soon as we can. And then if you have any questions, you can also ask them on our public Q&A, which is going to be put, the link is going to be put into the chat function as well. If you need a reminder of what our master's courses are all about, there are lots of on-demand videos from our March event, and they're available through the Postgraduate Hub, and the link is also going to be put into the chat there as well. And then, you know, there's also information there on our fee, on how to apply, the fees, and the links to the application portal as well. I just want to remind you also that some of our postgraduate programs have actually closed for this year, but the majority of them are open until the 25th of August. But you can check the program of your interest on our website, and you can see what the closing date is for that particular program. So that's my little bit of housekeeping, and I'm going to pass you over to DCU's Director of External Engagement, Laura Mahoney, who is going to officially welcome you to this event this evening. So you're very welcome, Laura. Thank you.
Thanks a million. Thanks, Colette. And welcome everybody. Welcome to our virtual postgraduate event, and thank you for your interest in postgrad studies here at DCU. My postgrad journey brought me to Ireland 27 odd years ago, and it was a decision that absolutely changed my life. Here at DCU, we're focused on giving all our students a transformative experience, and we're known for our excellent, innovative, industry-related programs, as well as our absolutely people-first approach to teaching and learning, which put you, the DCU students, at the very centre. There are many reasons why people want to pursue postgrad studies. You might want to expand subject knowledge, strengthen your CV, accelerate your career path. You might want to change profession altogether, gain a specific qualification, or just pursue a passion, expand your horizons. Whatever your reasons are, I'm confident that DCU has a course that will help you achieve your goals. This event will give you a chance to hear from DCU graduates about their experience at DCU and how completing a postgrad degree can benefit your career. The topics will include managing your time, how to cope with balancing work and study, the importance of building your support networks. There'll also be a session on support available from our DCU Student Support and Development Service, and a reminder about how to fund your postgrad studies. I want to thank all my colleagues in advance for all the work they've put in to getting this event together. To our guest speakers, thank you very much, and of course to our MC, and thank you for joining us. The university's big mission is to transform lives and societies, but we only do that through our students. So please see this as an investment in you, in yourself, in your future. And I really look forward to welcoming you to DCU. Enjoy the event. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Laura. And now to begin our sessions, we are delighted to welcome Richard Chambers as our host for this panel session, the next panel session. And I'm sure a lot of you will know Richard as you know, a journalist and a TV news correspondent for Virgin Media, and also an ex-DCU graduate of the MA in journalism. So Richard, I'm going to hand it over to you for the next 20 to 30 minutes, and I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion. Thanks a million, Richard.
Great. Colette, thank you so much for that. Really delighted to be here on this Consider Postgrad event for DCU. As Colette said, I did my postgrad in the MA in journalism program in DCU back in 2010, 2011. And it's pretty fair to say that I wouldn't be where I am now without it, without the connections that I made in it, without the education and first-hand experience that you got through that program. So I have huge gratitude to it. And I think what you're going to hear from some of the panelists in this discussion is how the postgrad programs offered by DCU allow for great specialization. For me, it was really actually about a chance to course correct. I did law in UCD beforehand as an undergraduate. It really wasn't the career path for me, and DCU's postgrad program really offered a huge branch of a career, which I hadn't even considered a huge amount up until that point. So enough about me. Without further ado, I'd love to introduce Our four panelists for this discussion, they include Paul Sheridan, who's a chartered engineer at Accenture. He did the M.Eng program in computer engineering and electronic computer engineering in 2022. Paul, thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everybody. Happy to meet you all.
Cheers, Paul. Katie McNamee is also on the call. She's a senior account executive at Red Flag. She did the MA in political communications in 2021. Katie, how's it going?
Hi, everyone. Hope you're well.
Great stuff. Niamh Byrne is the digital marketing manager for BMW Ireland. She did digital marketing at 2020. Niamh, how are you doing?
Hi, everyone.
Great stuff. And our final panelist, Lorenzi Pisani, who did the MSc in astrophysics and relativity. He is now completing his PhD in mathematical sciences. Lorenzi, how are you doing?
Hi, nice to meet you. It's all good.
There we go. Nice clean lines for everybody as well, which is good for Zoom. As Colette mentioned, if you have any questions at any point, you can pop them in the chat box. If there's anything our panelists can answer, I might direct them to each of them individually. But for now, guys, I want to start off. I'll start at the back because I was chatting to you last there, Lorenzi. What guided you towards your postgraduate choice in DCU?
Okay, so it's an interesting question because I come from Italy and I did my studies in engineering before, and then I actually found out that that was not really my my thing, and so I looked around and I wanted to move to physics, and I found this master's here in Dublin. I was really excited, and yeah, I decided to come, and I was really happy with my choice actually.
Is that so? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there is kind of two paths really that people have into it. It's whether they want to specialize in a specific area or they weren't happy in a previous path and they want to specialize in something differently. I don't know if any of our other panelists have anything they want to say about how they ended up choosing the panel they did. Niamh, do you have any particular guidance for you can give our attendees today?
Yeah, mine was quite similar, but what I was doing before was slightly more related. So I did event management for my undergrad, which had a lot of marketing in it. And that's how I kind of discovered that was the route that I wanted to go down, specifically digital. And then when I had a look at the different options for a digital marketing master's, the reason why DCU stood out for me was the practical element. So a lot of the modules had practical elements where you work with live clients, and that was something that I was really keen to do. So that was what made me go with DCU in the end, and that was definitely something that really served me. Like when I finished and then was going out into interviews and everything, I found that I had a lot of kind of real world experience to give, as well as my time there. So I was able to talk about different projects that I worked on and different clients and companies that they knew, Irish companies that they were aware of. So it was really helpful then when I was coming out to have that experience behind me as well.
Katie or Paul, I'm not sure if you have that sort of the real world experience. That was something for me which really did have a huge positive impact on my career direction after that point. I'm not sure whether the real world experience was something that really stands out from your DCU experience too.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to talk on this one. I was different in the sense that I was looking more so to just tailor what I'd already studied, and I was pretty happy with what I'd studied. I did journalism in TUD, and I did the MA then in political communications. So my goal was, I thought I wanted to be a political correspondent. So I thought this would be a good course. And the reason why I suppose DCU stood out as well is there's a couple of different public affairs masters that you can do. But this one was unique in the sense that you had things like modules like PR and different elements of communications that I've never had experience in before. And that ended up, I did my thesis, and the topic that I did my thesis on actually led me on to my next career, which was in Brussels. And I went to Brussels for 9 months and came back. But, you know, it's interesting that the topic I'm working on something for a couple of months actually kind of opened up avenues, and I got to meet a couple of members of the European Parliament. So for me, yeah, the real world experience, I mean, it started with the work on my thesis and then kind of flourished from there. Yeah.
Paul, what about your own path through it? I mean, you've had a career which has taken you to different countries as well out of this. I mean, how did that real world basis from DCU set you on that path?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it with DCU, to be honest. I'm obviously a mature student, and I did my second master's, which I believe, at DCU, and I was drawn to it for that very reason, because I did it in an MA in IoT, which is a very kind of, a real kind of cutting edge topic. It was really useful for me because obviously I work in engineering. And just to have the ability to be, working, and in parallel with that, being able to, lean on probably the best, doctors and professors in the business is an incredibly powerful blend of theory and practical application. So for me, the real world experience was very real because, I was studying the modules at night and I was putting them to use during the day. So it was a perfect blend for me.
What was the learning experience like? I mean, because everybody here, or at least most people here who are coming in and looking at this, are considering going into DCU for the postgrad programs, whatever they might be specializing in. But what was the day-to-day like? I mean, people do part-time versus full-time on postgrads. What was each of your experiences like? If you could describe the average day-to-day, I'll start with you, Lorenzo. What was the day-to-day like for you in DCU?
I would say, first of all, I want to say it's that one of the nice things that I think is important to say about DCU and studying there, at least for me, it was a very friendly environment. And in fact, you could, at least for me, the classes were not too big. So you could have a relationship with the teacher and they get to know each other, all the classmates. And that's really nice, I think, because it creates, it gives the possibility to, let's say, talk with each other and therefore improve the knowledge altogether. And I would say the thing is the days usually don't, for me, in my case, you didn't have too many hours of study of lecture, sorry, and so that was actually nice. And it was a good balance as well in between the actual lectures and tutorials. And in tutorials, usually you are given some problem or you're given some work to do, and you kind of do it on your own. And then if you have problems on your own or with a group of other classmates, and then if you have any doubts, you can always, you have always the teacher there or somebody else to help you. And it's really, really handy, I think. But yeah, in general, it was not super, let's say, busy, the schedule, I would say. So yeah.
Yeah. It's good actual point. I mean, that was something which I noticed when I came into DCU, is I came from a completely different field, which is in UCD. And it was a huge program. There was lectures with 200 to 300 people in them. And sometimes the contrast then to going into a postgrad, which is so much more, it was basically about, I think there was like 27, 28 of us, I think, were in it. That was such a huge gear shift of an experience, and it's just the focus, and also to be able to familiarize with yourself with people who are in your class, sort of get to know them, because these are connections which ended up actually lasting. Like some of the guys who I met in the course ended up being colleagues who I'm still working with today, or they were long-standing friends or contacts in the media as well. So it does have a huge impact, that sort of gear change. I don't know if you found that, Niamh, in your program. You've been nodding along there.
Yeah, definitely. The same with my course. I think there was only around 20 of us or something. So you really do get to know everyone that's doing the program with you. And also, like, there's people who've come from different industries and people who are mature students that might be working in the field already. So for our program, we had a really good combination of group work, and then also you do some work on your own. So when you did get to work in a group, you were working with people that worked across all different industries, like different parts of the world, and then mature students as well that might be in positions that we're kind of looking to go into when we're finished. So it was really good to kind of work with everyone in that way. And you learn so much from your peers. And then, like Lorenzo mentioned as well, I found, like, when I did my undergrad, there was some lecturers who I never even spoke to, or wouldn't have had a clue who anyone was. Whereas in the program, everyone, the lecturers would know everyone on a first name basis, and you had a really good relationship with them. So that's definitely very different to the undergrad experience.
Paul, what did you think about that? I mean, how did you find the learning experience there? Was the balance between, work and study good, or did you find that shift? Because I mean, you've done a couple of these now at this point in time, and coming in as a mature student on it, I mean, it's interesting to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, to be honest with you. And the reason being was that a lot of the lectures, obviously I had the live lectures and stuff like that, but I also had the opportunity to pause and rewind lectures, which for me is just so invaluable. That previously I didn't have that, and I'm quite a visual learner. And also, I think given the program that I was going into was computer engineering, I didn't have any coding experience or anything like that. So I genuinely think that being in a classroom surrounded by people that were really confident in that would have really kind of really intimidated me. So I was very lucky in so much as that, you know, I could learn at my own pace, quite literally, you know, and then I could put my questions up on loop and stuff like that. But there's a lot to be said for being able to pause and rewind a lecture, particularly around computer engineering, multiple times. It's a real game changer, and it was a big difference for me, to be honest, because it was learning at my pace. Yeah.
Katie, you were typing away there an answer to one of our attendees there. So I mean, I was just wondering, from your perspective, you were sort of branching into something which you had already started down the path towards, but you wanted to focus in on something, you know, a specific area of that. How did you find the transition then, really, and what was it like working alongside or learning alongside people, you know, who are in that same field?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, in terms of the size, it's similar to what yourself and Niamh have mentioned in terms, I think it was less than 30. But what I found to be the most beneficial aspect of the course that I did was you had there was obviously a lot of part-time, and then there was a fewer number of full-time students. But I think, you know, a lot of the part-time were actually working in the field, whether that was press officers for political parties or whether it was NGOs. And a lot of the work we did was that kind of practical kind of brainstorming sessions. We'd have in really interesting guest speakers, you know, like head of communications for Brexit and things like that. And to kind of have those people that are in the field, in contrast to myself, who was in my parents' house during COVID and had taken a year out because I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do, that was really useful, you know, and we kind of built up close relationships. And although albeit I studied over COVID, you know, a lot of the relationships that I made, I'm still friends with them now, even though, you know, we only met purely on an online forum as such. But yeah, I think having all those different fields and kind of people from different walks of life was extremely beneficial in terms of we got to kind of sit there most days and speak about, you know, different perspectives coming at it from different jobs.
Good point, actually, Katie. I mean, the fact that a lot of people will have done their undergrad maybe through COVID, or they might have been quite younger really when they were actually doing their undergraduate program. It's actually can be quite a difficult point in time to sort of decide what you actually ultimately want to do for a career choice. So having that sort of input from guest lecturers or people who have, you know, strong experience in that field can make a huge impact. I'm wondering, Lorenzo, is there anything lecture-wise or something that was taught through the MA program, or the MSc program, I should say, that really had an influence on you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, for example, for me, it was really the first time in which I really found out what my not goal in life was, but like more like what my interest was really, and so I was really motivated to follow this program, and I tried to give all I could, because again, it was really nice. But yeah, I'm not sure I am understanding exactly what you
this is really, if there's anything in particular which stood out from what you were learning in the master's program, that really, whether it be a guest lecture or it be something which, you know, you picked up through lectures, that really did stand out for you and just helped you, you know, progress.
Yeah, I think the nice thing for this master's was that, as many people were saying again, there was a lot of different people that were coming from different backgrounds, and the master was really built in this sense, because they, let's say, didn't require you to have a strong background in physics and mathematics necessarily, and so the course was built with a very big introductory course on general relativity, and that was, let's say, the one that really opened my eyes, let's say, and they started from scratch for given all the definitions and everything, and in this sense was very helpful because it could really create some good environment for people coming from very different, well, not super different, let's say, but because of course you needed some background in mathematics, but yeah, it was really well built in that sense to kind of manage to get people from all over, let's say. Yeah.
For sure. And Eve, is there anything that stood out from your perspective in what happened and what was taught to you guys through your program? I know Paul also mentioned, you know, the platform like Loop. I mean, maybe some people who are coming in aren't familiar with that particular platform, which does seem to be quite key to a lot of the learning in DCU. I wonder if you could give us a few pointers if you had any experience through that platform too.
Yeah, so my experience was actually, I started 2019, so I started in person and then COVID hit halfway through and then we went fully online, so I kind of got to do both sides of it. But I have to say, like, it was a really smooth transition to online from DCU. And then, like Paul mentioned, you kind of had all those online resources, which really helped me as well. Like if there was something that you forgot or you weren't sure on, you were able to kind of go back and you had all that there, which is so helpful. And then in terms of Loop, that was where we kind of submitted all of our assignments and all the communication and everything was up there, but it's really easy to use. And like, there was so many great online tools. We had a lot of our lectures online, of course, once we moved over with guest speakers. A lot of the guest speakers were actually people who had previously done our masters, which was great as well, because you were kind of able to see their journey and where they had gone to. And then that led to lots of connections afterwards, which is so valuable when you're kind of going into a new industry and you haven't really made any of those. So coming out, that was really helpful to have all those there. But yeah, I definitely, from experiencing the in-person and online, the online tools are so helpful. And it's really great to kind of have an infinite amount of resources there that you can go back over and use when you need them as well.
Paul, I'm wondering if you have anything to sort of add in that in terms of, you know, what really did you take away from the program that has stood the test of time to you in terms of your career? Is there anything which you picked up, which you think probably had a huge impact on where you've ended up really?
I think it's practicality, you know, it's got to be practicality, and particularly as an engineer, the degree that I did, the master's, was in computer engineering. So, you know, you do a piece of code and next thing the light beside you was flashing. So quite literally very practical, you know, in so much as, you know, coding for a lot of the time, you know, you see your outcomes, but only kind of within the script that you're working in or on a web page or something like that. Whereas we're quite literally connecting the external to the, you know, the real time in terms of what you're working on. And some of the lectures which I had, Professor Derek Malloy quite literally wrote the book on Raspberry Pis. So, you know, you're dealing with that level of people, and, you know, I can't speak highly enough for the lectures that I had at that time, because they just opened my mind to a whole kind of, you know, different way of thinking. And I think it's interesting, and just to point out for any kind of mature students that are there, or even anybody who's only kind of doing their undergrad at the moment and thinking about doing something different, is that this is my second master's. I'll do a third master's. I'll probably do a fourth, to be honest with you, because my original master's was in sustainable energy systems, because at the time I wanted to know about that topic. And now I've done, you know, IoT because I wanted to know about that topic. And who knows, in kind of 8 years, I'll give myself that gap, I might do one on AI. So, you know, I think it is a continual journey, and I think you should always be thinking about that too, and the practicality of how you can apply it into your career and where you see your career going. That, you know, what is the trajectory that you would like to add and supplement it with a bit of additional learning. So in terms of practicality, yeah, I would be thinking about my next degree if I was you guys as well.
Just before I want to turn to Katie, I actually see a question, or one question, which I actually can answer. It was basically in terms of job placements from DCU. And I think that was actually one of the things from my MA program, which did obviously, I don't know, 11, 12, 13 years ago at this point in time, yikes, it was actually one of the standout things. There was the intra program through the MAJ, and that was my first sort of workplace experience of journalism. I landed in Today FM. I think I was one of the last people who actually got interviewed as part of the process. I was very much bottom of the pile at that point in time, which was a huge knock on confidence. But going in there and sort of being dealt with as if you are a full professional just made a huge impact, because everything that you've done up until that point, even before DCU, if you're doing sort of journalism in a sort of a student basis for newspapers in college, it's just so far removed really from the realities of what work is like. And I think that the DCU programs, whether it be in different fields across, you know, whether it be into engineering, as Paul is saying, or it be political communications, or any of the different fields, they do their absolute best to basically condition you for what the reality of the working world will be like in your chosen field. So Katie, I know you've basically mentioned that, and that fact that you've had guest lecturers really did have a huge impact on that in terms of your future directions. Is there any sort of wisdom you can give to any of the people who are attending there who are in between two minds as to whether or not this will be something which will make a huge difference to their life? Is there any sort of input you can give them which might help clarify that for them?
Yeah, sure. And look, I think one of the examples, and it's funny, I only realized this a couple of months ago, and I had to go back over my emails, and my job that I'm in now, you know, 2 years later, I'm senior account exec with Red Flag. Someone from Red Flag actually spoke to us, and because I had a feeling that it was one of my bosses, but I couldn't really recall because we'd had a lot of guest speakers. And going back over my notes, I realized that it was them. And I think it's funny, you know, to have exposure to something that in a job that I'm now actually in, I think is interesting. And I think, again, like my biggest takeaway was those connections, whether they're hard earned, which in the case of doing a thesis, it can be a lot of going back and forth and about 100 or 200 emails to loads of different, in my case, it was members of the European Parliament, but the same applies across the board. You know, it's a lot of kind of tireless work to make those connections. But I think, look, you know, for someone who had done journalism, as you say, in that kind of student capacity, and I'd done a bit of freelance as well, and worked with the Irish Mirror and things like that. But I really had no clue in terms of the political communications landscape and public affairs. And I really found throughout the course of this master's that it was something that I really enjoyed. I mean, I was always interested in politics, and I kind of thought that would equate to me then becoming a political correspondent. But this kind of opened up a realm of different careers that you know, that were out there, like whether it's working in public affairs or working in an agency, and whether you blend that with public relations or journalism, you know, it's a lot more vast than you think. And I think it's very easy to put yourself in a box and kind of think, well, there's nothing out there for what I want to do. There 100% is. And I think that's the joy of doing a master's. You meet the people who are doing the things that you were, you know, didn't even know existed in some cases.
Yeah, Katie, it's actually a great point. It's something I don't want us to be focused too much on the sort of journalism communications end of things. But from my perspective, I went into the MA program thinking I wanted to do one type of journalism, which was, you know, to write match reports and do sports journalism. Whereas over the course of doing the program, I discovered that broadcasting and doing radio was something which I actually really had an affinity for. So I think that's something which you can stumble across. I'm sure, Niamh, there's something that you came across throughout the program, the postgrad program, that really just clicked with you, that really made you feel like this is something that you wanted to do, or maybe something that you didn't have much of an experience with before up until that point?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like Lorenzo mentioned, it was the first time that I kind of felt like I had found my passion, and it was something that I really wanted to do. And it's actually funny, very similar to Katie's story. When I went for the job that I'm in now, the person that was interviewing me had actually come and given us a guest lecture and had done the same course as well. So that was common ground that we had, and she kind of understood how much work goes into it, and the reputation that DCU has is very well, everyone in the industry kind of knows about the programs and knows about the hard work that goes into it. So it is very highly regarded, and that's something that in my job now, and even in my previous job, came up in my interviews both times. Like, the master's was a huge topic of conversation and something that I was able to kind of talk about. So yeah, it's definitely had a massive impact on my career, and I don't think that I would be in the industry or the roles that I've been in and that I'm in now without it.
Guys, we're running out of time on this part of the presentation, but I just want some closing thoughts from each of you, if I can. I mean, whether you do a part-time or full-time postgrad program, it is a big commitment, and that is something that each of us has found very rewarding in what we've gone on to do. But I wonder if you have any closing thoughts or any sort of nuggets of wisdom that might, you know, tip people towards whether or not they actually do make a decision to go on to any of these programs.
I'd say just go for it, whatever it is, you know, and if particularly if you don't think you can do it, that's even more of a reason to do it, particularly, you know, with all the things that Niamh said as well. All the resources are there online, and it's a lot more kind of additional support than you would have had in a typical degree, because, you know, you have all the lectures recorded and stuff like that. There's all the help in the world to help you get through whatever the course is you choose to do, and DCU are incredibly supportive in doing that. So yeah, I would 100% don't write yourself off. Never write yourself off, whatever you do. So definitely go for it.
That's a man to listen to as well, given the fact that he says he's going to keep on doing these programs for for the rest of his life and beyond. But guys, thank you so much for joining us on what was a really, really informative panel. Paul, Katie, Niamh, and Lorenzo, thank you so much for all of that. I'm going to move on now to move into our next presentation, which is speaking about the benefits of completing the postgraduate degree. Sarah Garrity, who is the head of careers at the Communications Clinic, is going to discuss about how this can have an impact on your employment opportunities, your network, and push you towards realizing those career ambitions. Sarah.
Thank you, Richard. I'm feeling like a real fraud now. I had to do full disclaimer that I actually didn't do my master's degree in DCU. I did work in DCU a few years ago, so I'll use that as my way in. I was thinking about this morning, and I remembered years ago, if Richard was feeling a bit panicky about how many years ago his master's was, I just had an existential crisis there. But I was thinking about having just finished my undergraduate degree, and I overheard a conversation between my mum and dad, and it was very common knowledge in my family that my undergraduate degree was quite underwhelming, and I took a long time to finish it. So it was no surprise when I heard my dad say to my mum, when I launched into the fact that I was going to go to Edinburgh and do a postgraduate degree, I heard him say, "But she just got a degree. Why does she have to go and do another one?" And I was thinking about that this morning, feeling kind of bad about it. But I've decided to use it this evening to tell you, I suppose, why I did it, why it was so useful. And I want to do it from a couple of points of view. So I want to do it from my own personal perspective and from the perspective of my role as head of careers at the Communications Clinic. So that role basically entails me heading up a team that helps hundreds of people prepare for job interviews every year. They're preparing for roles in the public sector, in the private sector. And at this stage, I have a pretty good insight into what employers are looking for and what candidates should be focusing on. And this is, I suppose, where it started with me thinking about the 3 reasons that I wanted to share with you as to why I think you should really strongly consider doing a postgraduate degree. The first one is pretty clear cut. It's that it undoubtedly helps you to stand out at job interviews. It's a crowded market, so it's really important to know how to stand out. Secondly, I think there's no doubt about it, and this was kind of vibrating off the screen when the previous speakers were speaking. It most certainly instills a confidence in people. I think it instills a confidence in people that's really, really important, in that I think it gives you a real sense and an understanding of your place in the world, whatever world that is that you want to be in. You know, if it's Richard in journalism, if it's PR, if it's engineering, that you have objective evidence to support you being there and you being heard and you speaking to people. So that's the second reason I think it's really important. And thirdly, and I know people are allergic to this word, and I think there's good reason, it shows you how to network. And it shows you how to network well. It shows you how to network the right way. And maybe if we all start doing it the right way, we can shake off the bad press that has been understandably attached to that word. So they're the 3 reasons I was thinking about from a personal point of view and a professional point of view. So I'm going to talk through those now. The first one is the fact that a job interview process, no matter what way you slice it, it's a competition, okay? And a postgraduate degree can undoubtedly give you an edge on your competition. I am not a cutthroat kind of person, but perhaps this job has made me a bit more cutthroat, because I have to remind clients of mine every single day of this fact, whether they're getting ready to interview for a role in a Big 4 accountancy firm, whether they're going into aircraft leasing, whether they're going to a law firm. whether they are, you know, upskilling in education or trying to find a job in the HSE. You really need to find a way to make yourself stand out, because no offense to anybody here, and I include myself in this, you're likely competing with people who've got very similar backgrounds, who've got similar skill sets, who maybe went to similar schools, you know, who've similar degrees, whose CVs look very, very similar. And for that reason, you have to step back and you have to give yourself time and space to think about what does give me the edge? What does differentiate me? You know, what is going to make me interesting and memorable enough for the person who's reading my application form to say, oh, that's interesting, let's give her a call, let's hear more about that. Or to think, that's different, that's new, during that really important 2-minute interview pitch, when you don't have, you know, a huge window, or as big a window as people think they have anyway, to pitch themselves into a role. You know, last week I was loads of examples of this, but one woman stands out to me last week. She was preparing for a job for a role in a government department, and initially she was going to completely ignore the fact that in a previous life she had done a postgrad in inclusive and special education. When she stopped in her panic mode for a moment, and she thought about it, she realized that with a bit of research, she understood that the team she'd be joining was in the middle of drawing up its diversity and inclusion strategy, and that she could be a really, really important, pivotal, actually, part of that. So that's what she wanted to bring to the interview. You know, initially she was going in saying, but that's a whole different life, that was for a whole different role. There was loads of stuff in there that she could bring and make herself stand out and make herself understand that that was going to give her the edge on somebody else. So I would encourage clients every single day to just stop for a second and say, hang on, what is it that gives me the edge on somebody else? Because we all have something. And it's really easy, I think, for people to say, but sure, look, what makes me stand out? Hasn't everyone done this? Hasn't everyone got that? You've all got something. And I strongly, strongly believe that. And I see evidence of it every single day. So just take the time and space to think back on that, you know, that it's not just going into an interview saying, well, you know, I've done a master's in accounting, so there you go. What modules in accounting did you find particularly interesting? Do you know, what did you have a particular aptitude for? I don't know why I've actually used accounting as an example there. I still get flashbacks to how bad I was at maths. But that's something that's really important. Was there something in there that, you know, you really, really leaned into that you could bring to this particular organization that you're interviewing for? So that's what the first thing I'd really like people to remember when it comes to postgraduate degrees. It's a really, really effective way of making yourself stand out. And if you go into every interview process and look at it as a competition, it will be a lot easier for you to identify what's going to give you the edge on them. Okay, talking about, you know, particular parts of your degree in detail can absolutely make you a diverse and therefore a competitive applicant. Okay, so that's my cold hard clinical sell on a postgraduate degree. Okay, that's the first thing I would say. Okay, secondly, and I really, really loved what everybody was saying in that first panel, because it just completely chimes at my second point. I think postgraduate degrees, and I saw this myself and I've seen it with a lot of my friends, I think they're really, really good training for the real world. I think that they do things that were described really, really well by the previous speakers. I mean, for example, it was to my absolute horror that I learned very, very quickly when I landed in Edinburgh to do a master's in European Union politics and law for some reason, that you're expected to do a lot more independent work. You know, there's much less hand-holding than you might have done as an undergrad. And then even more to my horror was that, you know, it wasn't just expected that you made your voice heard, it was absolutely required. And I thought there was a real, I thought it really upped the ante, because what I became very, very aware of in my postgraduate degree was that there was loads of people who had been striving for this and had wanted to do this for years and years and years. So you're surrounded by people who are kind of, you know, upping your expectations of yourself. And I found that to be really, really, really helpful, really challenged myself and really made me, you know, I suppose we hear this a lot, but it really made me force myself to get out of my comfort zone. And I really believe, because I see it again every day, there is no better way to sharpen your skills early on than to be forced out of your comfort zone, than to have to do something that it's easier to say no to. Oh, I'd prefer not to actually stand up and deliver this short, sharp, to the point piece of, you know, critical analysis of this particular theory. No, sorry. You're actually here for a reason. I think it was Obama said once, if you're not going to speak up in this room, what room is there? You know, I kind of got that sense of my master's degree as well. And I think what's really, really important there about those types of skills is that they're always going to be transferable. It doesn't matter what shape the economy is in. It doesn't matter actually if you decide that you're going to leave a corporate law firm and try and get a foot in radio. You know, they're transferable skills that you're picking up and you're honing and you're sharpening along the way. And you're also doing a really good job in taking the fear factor out of it, because I meet people all the time who are absolutely brilliant at what they do, but the fear factor takes over, and that's just a really, really huge waste. So what I would say at this point is that, of course, technical knowledge will always be important. But more and more employers that I speak to and listen to now are, thank God, looking out for people with strong communication skills. And they're also looking out for, as I was reminded of this morning, people who have a proven ability to take the initiative, you know, to actually do something themselves. There's a sense of kind of, you know, asking for forgiveness rather than asking for permission, but that you're going and taking the bull by the horns and actually doing these things. And I think being part of a postgraduate program and everything that entails and everything that was described by the group beforehand can really put you in a strong position to do that. I was speaking to the HR director at a corporate law firm recently, and she said to me, I think kind of off the record, that she's actually been citing those types of abilities ahead of undergrad academic results, because she said you can learn that stuff, like you can pick all that stuff up, but actually what she's finding it really hard to instill in people are the communication skills, the team playing stuff, the initiative and all of that stuff. So I think it's really important to look at it that way. You know, there's many clients that stand out to me who, you know, lost their jobs during COVID or decided to try something new. One guy stands out. He was applying for jobs in sectors that he'd absolutely no experience in, and he was understandably worried that he wouldn't get called to interview. But he'd been clever, and he'd included in his CV the fact that as part of his master's in accountancy, he had regularly led, you know,
Neil O'Byrne has left the meeting.
Group projects, and you know that he had stood up and delivered the group's findings back from those group projects, and that was able to prove really, really clearly, loads of evidence that he had really strong communication skills and team playing abilities. So what I see every day is people gliding over that stuff and assuming it's not important. It's really, really important. I've got people who've come in and they've never had a quote unquote real job before, but they start to delve into the stuff that they did and the fact that they had to get to know new people and do all of that stuff. And that's a really strong skill set that you can prove in a really interesting way if you are mindful of it being a skill. I think also just one last thing on that point is, and I'm sure most people here have experience of it, don't overlook the fact that many of you, I'm sure, like me, and balanced working part-time with a fairly intensive master's degree as well. Like that's proving a lot to a lot of people about your ability to be organized, to manage your time, to be disciplined. All of that stuff is incredibly important. So don't overlook that. It's really, really important. And it's undeniably impressive to people who are looking for, you know, varied people with a wide skill set. Finally, the third point I want to make around this is, as I said, networking. People can be allergic to the word, and I completely understand why they would be. I think I am myself. But I think what's really, really important about postgraduate degrees and that comfort zone piece as well is that it proves to you what networking is not. And networking is not about whizzing into a room with awful coffee at 7 o'clock in the morning and flinging out as many business cards as you can, and then going back to your office and saying, I'm pretty dab hand at networking. That is not what it is. All right. And that is not a skill. That's probably just making people want to absolutely duck and dive the next time they see you coming at them. What I certainly learned, and what I'm sure a lot of other people learned as well, is that landing into a postgraduate degree, whether it's in a new city or a new country, or it's just, you know, getting you away from your friends and family and what's familiar. It undeniably and it undoubtedly forces you out of your comfort zone. You know, you mightn't have all those people around, you mightn't have that support network, and you may be taking it on through a second language. You might completely understandably be finding the reading list and the workload a bit overwhelming. And the thing is, though, when it comes to a postgraduate degree, you have to be more proactive, or it just won't be the experience that it could be. And I think I picked that up really clearly from all the previous speakers. You actually just took the bull by the horns and went for it. And it was probably really scary, and you forget it being really scary, but that's kind of what you have to do. I think it can be a lot easier to fall through the cracks a little bit. So if you need to decide in advance, I'm going to be proactive about this, then that's what I'd like to leave people with. But I would say deciding to be proactive is what is key to effective networking. It's that decision you make to make meaningful connections with people, or a meaningful connection with at least one person. All right, that's what networking is. Networking, I'd say in its truest form, is making a decision and making a plan to broaden and enrich your network and to reap all the benefits that that can bring. And again, everybody else before me said that in a much clearer, more articulate way. I think, Katie, you were talking about all the connections. It was because of hard work that you committed to, but you know, you're clearly massively benefiting from that right now. And I think back to my time in Edinburgh, I was surrounded by people I never ever would have met otherwise, people from India and Greece and Poland, and all these people who took me out of it, to be fully honest, took me out of my little vacuum where I thought I knew everything. And I thought my insights and perspectives were, you know, absolutely spot on and more interesting than anybody else's. But that helped me to be more empathetic. You know, I did my master's degree at a time when we thought John McCain was the worst thing to happen in US politics. And now that seems like a dreamy situation to be in. But all of that stuff was really, really helpful, but I needed to be proactive about it. And I think to go back as well to Paul's point, it's not just important for making friends that you might still have 15 years later, but for the access and the FaceTime that you have with experts and leaders in their field, you know, people who are actually, you know, in the middle of history at the moment, that if you do it right, if you network right, if you make those connections and you forge those relationships and you mind them and you look after them, they're people that you can check back in with throughout your entire career. So that's really important. It really, really helped me. I moved to Washington, DC after I did my degree in politics and law. Most people went to Brussels. I got a visa and I decided to try America for a year. And again, I found myself in a similar situation. I landed there by myself. I was one of a million and however many women that looked and sounded like me, and I had to make myself stand out. Now, it obviously helped in Washington that I could say I went to a college in Ireland. They really like that. But I suppose what it helped me to do was, you know, get out of my comfort zone again and understand that networking actually means, you know, going out there and understanding what people do, understanding that people like to be heard and listened to, and they like someone to find them interesting. And I went out there, I did the really, really cringe thing of saying things like, "Hi, I like the sound of your job. Can I buy you a coffee and talk about it?" Even though I really couldn't afford to buy anybody coffee, or offer to work for free in senators' offices, even though I really, really, really couldn't afford to do that. And I had my mother screaming at me to come home.